Our next discussion takes an expansive look at the evolving modes of TV news presentation and the approaches taken by those doing the presenting. And it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Christian Bryant is the host of In the Loop on Newsy, which in just a couple of weeks' time will be going over by the new moniker of Scripps News. Barry Nash is a talent coach with Barry Nash and Company. Jonathan Soppy is the host, producer, and director of This Is Now on Gray Television's Hawaii News Now, and I believe has made the longest trip here today to be with, and on a direct flight, no less. So let's give it up for that.
There we go.
Complain about my 3-hour train.
And Nora Zimmett, who might have had the shortest commute, I believe, here, is the president of news and original series at the Weather Channel. Welcome to you all. Now, to set this up, I want to begin with the studio environment itself. And Barry, you recently undertook some market research for FX Design Company that I think will help us to frame up a part of this conversation. So you were tasked with studying the impact that on-set technologies have on viewer perceptions of newscasts and newscasters. So you looked at head-to-head comparisons of viewer reactions to the use of traditional monitors, touchscreens, 3x3 and 3x6 arrays, large and seamless LED arrays, and AR, VR sets and graphics. So can you explain what this study aimed to find out and what you learned?
Okay, I have some quick background. About 5 years ago, I've been coaching talent for 40 years, and talent research has aged about like I have, and not good. So about 5 years ago, my company started using text analytics to try to determine what viewers really most value about news talent. And what was important about that was it meant that we were able to really get inside people's heads, ask very open-ended questions, not put words in their mouths. And we began to get insights and get a window on what people valued that we had not had before. So we're very excited about that, and it's been very helpful in our work with talent. Matt McLaughlin and the folks at FX got wind of what we were doing and asked if we could apply that to understand how the environment might be affecting viewers' relationship with television news programs. And so essentially I'm going to just show you a little quick preview of some of what we did and what we learned. Methodologically, just quickly, we went out and we talked to 1,000 people. And we did a couple of things. We looked at weather segments, we looked at news segments, we looked at AR segments. And in all cases, we asked people first just to rate what they'd seen. And then we asked them why they had rated that. Again, working really hard not to put words in people's mouths. And can we back this up real quickly just so I can? Yeah. So this is just just kind of a quick preview from the weather piece of this. These are results from folks who watched weather segments. Now, what made this fun and interesting was we controlled for talent and for content. So we were literally looking at the same talent, delivering the same content in different venues. And nobody saw more than 2 venues. And so what we were really interested in was whether these respective venues would affect how people judge the value of what they were seeing. And so on the weather side, you can see that across the top, you're looking at sort of the sum of the answer to that first question, which was, you've watched this segment on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it? And we use what some of you may recognize as a net promoter score here, which essentially is a way of measuring enthusiasm for something. And this is the way that those prioritized in response. The columns you see on the bottom, what we're able to do with the analytics is to understand not just what people are saying, but what buckets it's falling into. And so when we looked at the impressions people had of these segments, what this is essentially telling you is 42% of the impressions they expressed related to the content of the segments, and almost 30% related to people and personality, and so on and so forth. So once we had people rate these things individually, we also did a head-to-head comparison. This is summarizing one really interesting result of this particular piece. I should have pointed out on the slide before, anybody notice where the break was? We had 3 environments, digital 3x3, a 3x3 array, and a chroma key that sort of scored alone at the top of the heap. And then at the bottom of the heap were a larger 3x6 array and WeatherPod with a large monitor in it. Now again, bear in mind these were exactly the same content, exactly the same weathercasters doing those. Then when we looked at them head to head, essentially what we found was that the head to head mirrored what the original rankings had shown, which was what I'm characterizing here as the more intimate settings won every time head to head against, in this case, the 3x6 array. When we asked people to explain their preferences, then you can see where their comments fell. The great majority of them then did have to do with the environment and how it was helping them feel good or not so good about what they were seeing. And then the last slide, this is where the real fun is. We got what viewers think in viewers' own words. And you can kind of see the theme. It's pretty easy here, right? I like the close-up, and he had a more engaging, fun tone. All things about things being clear, close, and personal. And, of course, the question that we had and we're interested in here was, okay, the only thing different about these is the environment. Then what is it important to viewers that the environment is here really helping to resonate and support? We also did it in news, and just a quick teasing, I think it's a good headline. We had 1 desk setting and 3 standing settings, and head to head, the desk setting was preferred every time.
Which we're going to come back to the desk in a little bit later. Thoughts are had about that. Nora, you are at the Weather Channel, where a few years back we saw the advent of immersive mixed reality. Let's take a quick peek at what that looks like if you haven't seen it already.
Huge heavy objects thrown into the air and carried several hundred feet. Oh! Jeez, you gotta be kidding.
Wildfires can turn forest floors and even neighborhoods into nearly unstoppable raging infernos.
Absolutely life-threatening situations.
Winds accelerate under the overpass, bringing dangerous flying debris.
Climate predictions from decades ago have come to fruition.
You are going to have a little bit of snow before this.
We'll be watching severe weather again tomorrow.
Welcome to the Weather Channel's exclusive virtual view.
We can show you what the weather will actually look and feel like before it ever happens.
La red eléctrica de Texas tuvo fallas múltiples en el sistema.
Water is flowing a little stronger.
And my flood risk is increasing.
Wait until local officials give the all clear before traveling home.
Losses routinely top $10 billion.
Join us on our virtual journeys as we experience the weather in a whole new way.
You gotta love Jim Cantore. So, Nora, what has been the impact on your audience of introducing this kind of AR? How do they feel about it?
So we took a different approach. We took a different approach from what Barry is talking about. It wasn't exactly up close and personal. But in dealing with the weather, what we found is if you were not going to be outside, right, and of course we are for storms, but if we're not going to be outside, we need to bring the weather for a visual, visceral experience inside the studio. And what we have found is that it's really paid off in terms of the engagement that we're seeing from audiences. A lot of what you saw there was, some wow factor and the cinematic experiences with the car falling. That was an EF5 tornado explainer. But some of what we have gotten the most aha moments from our audience over has been things like storm surge, which is demonstrating weather experiences that are very easy and simple to explain, but are lost in terms of the impacts when you show on a 2D graphic or a 2D screen. So the most rewarding feedback we've gotten is, I never thought of it that way, and when you tell me to evacuate for X, Y, and Z event, I now understand why, and I'm going to do it. So that's been huge, and we've also seen a ton of interest from advertisers and distributors, and that's been a really interesting part of the industry that we didn't really expect, but people are coming to us because they want to be a part of these environments as well.
And how has this been iterating as you've had it several years now? Yeah. So is it continuing to evolve with the precision of the graphics?
Absolutely. We have been fortunate enough to be doing this during the age of very real life video games, which is how we came about, which is how we thought of this 8 years ago. The only problem with thinking about it 8 years ago is we were so ahead of the industry, there wasn't any infrastructure or technology to do it. We had to go to Finland in order to even find the one guy in the world who knows how to do anything about this. Fast forward 5 years later, we were able to partner with the Unreal Engine, right? Which is what gives you all the famous video games. A lot of you are gamers, come on, I know you are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, please, thank you very much. And has been able to give us a lot more to play with, a lot more tools, and a lot more skilled designers. The other thing is that what we've done over the past few years, and most recently the last 2 years, is a lot of those experiences you see are the cinematic ones. Again, the car falling, that took months. We now do this live. Some of what you saw in the studio with Tevin and with Jim Cantori, with the rain coming in the studio, we went from 5 months to 5 minutes. You give us a scene, and we will give you the real weather conditions. And as of a month ago, we are now able to change weather conditions live on the fly without any editing. So from fog to rain to snow without cutting away. So this advent of being able to do it live is a game changer in being able to present to our audience.
Fascinating. So, Jonathan, you have not had a car hurled at you virtually around the
that we know of.
I don't think. You did have an eruption, though, in Hawaii, just like a week ago.
Just officially ended today.
So,
yeah.
okay, wow. So, but you have created a very unique show in This Is Now, which runs on Gray Television's Hawaii News Now. Let's look at a short clip of it now so we can see it for ourselves.
Our viewers are really engaged online with us, and I think providing them another newscast during the midday at noon, when they're on their lunch breaks, I think that's just going to expand H&N's audience and also provide our viewers with another source of news during their day.
Yeah, you're gonna see that This Is Now looks a lot different than your typical newscast. We sort of present it in a casual, behind-the-scenes format. We really are going after the big viral stories of the day, and of course, breaking news.
Things people are talking about online or at the water cooler. We don't really have a structured format.
It's a show that's going to give you all the news of the day, but also invoke a lot of emotion. It's the type of show to make you cry, laugh, scream out your set, all in the same 30 minutes.
This Is Now has everything.
This is really a new realm for us.
And Jonathan has a closet full of these shirts, he tells me.
I do.
So,
brightest person here, thank you. Yeah.
So it's a very different newscast in concept and execution. So what was the thinking behind it, and how do you put it together in a different kind of way each day?
Well, Lisa tapped in on it. She said we delivered all these OTT desk kits to all our stations in Gray. And really every station was tasked with doing something different or coming up with ideas of using it. Ours is not high-tech at all. Our setup is very low-tech. I think you even mentioned that to me. But what we're doing is really coming across conversationally. We talk to people in a real way. It's a very video podcast setup. It's like this, mics. We have a couple monitors behind us. But I hope that what comes across when we're presenting to news is that we care about our community. And several of the themes that have come up in your panels today, or what we really hone in on, were scavengers in our show. The first thing I do, I direct, I host, I produce the show all by myself. My co-host comes in an hour before we do it. We go through those camera folders. I'm looking for things that were not used, things that were missed, things that can really be sort of transported into a new story every day. We're looking for those kinds of stories. I think we come across as something that's hopefully a little bit relatable to people at home. I get a lot of times just talking in the public, we do seem to have a little bit of a younger audience. We really try to not come across as Captain Newsman. Obviously, I'm not Captain Newsman. I never will be. I'm never going to try to be. I just try to be as authentic as possible.
So you have no teleprompter.
No teleprompter.
No scripts.
No scripts.
What are the other?
Well, we do have scripts. We have hard copy notes.
So what other things are you kind of just tossing?
We
aside?
love conversations. We love having guests. We love having Zoom interviews. With the eruption, the very, very key thing to our show that really, 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 really helps us excel is how fast we can get things on the air. Like literally during the eruption, we would get a picture sent to our newsroom via USGS Twitter or the Volcano Observatory. It was tweeted out less than a minute later. I could get it on the air and talking about it on our morning show using our OTT desk. And that's outside of the realm of the show we do daily. So the quickness we can get things on the air, and I think another appeal to it that is sort of, because this panel is about presenting in a different way, I think viewers like seeing us play the piano. They like seeing us punch the buttons and see the behind-the-scene action a little bit. They see that it's actually happening in front of them in a real live situation. And they're like, oh, he just hit that button and that live shot came up and now he's talking to that person. They get an understanding. Viewers, I was just in some research recently about YouTube, and it was so fascinating to me how literate our viewers are to how TV works. Like, the magic is gone. Like, they understand how video is edited. Everyone does it on their phone every day. They understand what I'm doing when I'm pressing my buttons. So I think you're just being honest with them in this presentation style.
Pulling back the curtain a
little
bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Oz with the curtain just
That's
permanently pulled back, yeah. So, Christian, you are an anchor, and I mean this in the best possible way. You don't come across as one in any way, in a conventional way on the air. In that I wanted to include you in this conversation because the way that you approach this role, it seems to me, it comes across as very resoundingly authentic. And so you don't have that Captain Newsman persona, but rather, yourself. So I just wonder, how do you think about this way? How do you conceptualize your role and approach it every day in a way that sort of departs from conventional expectations we have about it?
Yeah, so I tried that Captain Newsman thing when I was a bit younger. I studied journalism at the University of Missouri, and in the earlier days, you could see me with my my suit coat on. Almost looked like I was wearing my dad's suit coat. But it just wasn't a good fit. At the end of the day, I am a navigator, and I'm trying to help people understand the world around them. But I'm also in a space where I get a chance to bring my whole self to the table, right? So one of the things that Michael and I had talked about earlier is a bit of a Venn diagram where I am trying to take my personal life and my professional life and make it so that it is a perfect circle. When I first came into the business, I thought I had to be like Ed Bradley, or as my uncle says, Bernard Shaw, to be respected. But what I've learned is that bringing my full self to the role is enough, and that seemed to resonate with some people. We did do a focus group when ITL first started, and 6% of respondents said I was extremely unlikable. So not everybody is into it. As we know, but I think that what we're doing is something special, and it's not exclusive, it's not unique. It's just a way of bringing your whole self to your work and a way to get to know the audience. I've made a joke a few times about In the Loop and how it is the dive bar of news shows, right? Y'all like dive bars? Anybody? Is there one nearby? We can meet up afterwards.
Not in this neighborhood.
Not around
the
here.
rent.
No, but I mean that because there's a certain authenticity when you walk in a dive bar, right? It is devoid of pretentiousness, and you get a chance to really just kind of chat it up with people. So I see myself as like one of the bar flies getting ready to talk to people about something that they didn't know about.
Except you're not yet in your cups.
Right.
Sober, it needs to be said.
That's it. Well, yes, sober.
Let's take a look at In the Loop.
This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Busy news day here on the show with all those stories and more coming your way in the next hour. But first, we're not exactly in the business of algorithms, but we're setting up a For You page here on In the Loop. And it says we're starting with TikTok. Your younger relative's favorite app is back in the news again, not for a viral meme or a dance craze, but once again for national security reasons. In recent weeks, there's been a bipartisan revival of the push to ban or more heavily regulate the app. It's rooted in concerns that the app collects a ton of user data, all of which could be easily accessed by the Chinese government.
Okay, so this industry has more presentational tools at its disposal than ever before, but it seems like a lot of people are wrestling with where and how they should actually use them, which partly, Barry, you were looking at. Nora, IMR is obviously very important for the Weather Channel, but what are the criteria for where you decide when and how to use it? How do you make those decisions? And then I think also just one kind of side question to that, then how quickly can you act on those decisions and actually make the thing?
Honestly, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head and used the most important word in the question, which was tool. I think one of I know the guiding principle of when and where and how we use our immersive mixed reality is, are we using it as a tool or are we using it as a toy? And if the answer is toy, then that's a no. We're not using it that way. A lot of media organizations have made some really nice strides using AR and IMR. But honestly, when I see it used other places, it begs the question, do they have to, or is it just pretty? Do they have to, or is it really nice window dressing? You know, if you're looking at a NASCAR event or a NASCAR show and there are a bunch of shows and cars in the background and they're not doing anything, like, is that, I mean, it looks great. It's really, I'm not trying to denigrate them, but is it important? Would the information still be delivered? Would you still consume it if the cars weren't in the background? And for us, it has to be a tool. It has to be a way to tell a story, such that you would get a different message if you didn't see it the way we are presenting it, right? So, meaning the storytelling of the IMR needs to be the purpose, needs to be the end result, as opposed to just a flashy side condiment.
It
Do you know
must
what I mean?
justify itself.
Correct.
So, and you were saying before that from conception of now you can do this thing very quickly on the fly as opposed to just a couple of years ago, it was harder?
Right, so we have two different experiences. We have the cinematic, the cars jumping from the sky, people, our OCMs, our meteorologists sort of drowning in the streets with flash flooding. And then we have the anchor in the studio where it's raining, it's snowing, and you see it live, and we're doing it live. The latter, which we call virtual views, we can do within minutes, right? It's basically plugging coordinates into our Max computer, which has all of the weather data, and then it's using our special sauce with our software and hardware to show the studio and combining them. The cinematic experiences, again, used to take about 6 months. We now get them down to about 6 weeks. But the important thing there, and the important thing for all of this, is that scientists are behind every script, every design, and it has to be authentic, right? Using Christian's word, it has to be authentic to the actual weather phenomenon. It took 6 months to get a raindrop right, because raindrops are not drops, they are flat. Those kinds of things that scientists need to be behind. Otherwise, again, we delve into that toy sphere, and we need to stay in the tool sphere because we're a science organization.
So it's not the day after tomorrow or Twister. It's
not yet.
Please. Barry, FX Design Group study that you conducted harkens back to this old question of do I stand or do I sit? And how do I position myself around all this tech that I have in the room or the studio? So, how do you move around in a kind of unnatural space of a news studio and make it seem natural? I mean, what are you finding about how to exist in that space?
Well, first of all, to answer your question, do I stand or do I sit, is yes. I love what Nora said about storytelling, and I would build on that. It seems so obvious, but we see so many people far from it. It has to do with letting your talent be storytellers. In research, viewers are quick to criticize people who look awkward and uncomfortable. And I think at the heart of it, you've got to get into a mindset that is, I'm not treating my talent as set dressing. If I'm going to have the tools, then I've got to let my talent use them, and they've got to be comfortable using them. We joke with clients, and we say, anchoring has now become a full-body sport because we can literally see you from head to toe. And one of the beautiful things about the examples from the Weather Channel was how comfortable the meteorologists were with those things.
Our guys don't sit. In 8 years that I've been there, they don't sit down,
Right.
because of exactly what you just said.
I suspect that took some time, though, getting used to that, training that's...
Well, Barry knows.
So yeah, I hate to make my job sound as simple as it is, but I can't tell you how many times I give just the simple speech that the key to looking comfortable in a studio is what happens below the waist as much as what happens above the waist. That if you're able to move your feet and just let your weight shift, it makes an amazing...
You're describing dancing.
That's exactly right. It's dancing with it. Yeah. So and inherent in that is ownership. These guys are describing an authentic experience, but if you listen between the lines, they're talking about all the work they're doing to own it before they are doing it. Mm-hmm. And so after all these years, I don't know a shortcut to that.
So Christian, you seem to be, by and large, a desk man. How do you use the desk? What's the best way to treat a desk that it does feel like that you get that dive bar feeling, the extension of your personality?
So I want to correct the record here. It's not a desk, it's a workbench.
Okay.
And the reason why I need to correct the record is because, there's an intentional bit of minimalism that came along with developing this show. We started May 25th of 2020. What were we doing May 25th of 2020? You guys remember? Yeah, we were all just kind of retreated into our households and whatnot. So a few of us were in a newsroom. We just had to kind of cobble together some things that were there. We're taking cameras from the docs unit. We're taking the workbench that was laying around. And I feel like it's a bit of a callback to a more traditional setup, but a way for us to make it our own. Does it have some utility? Yeah, my mug's there. Sometimes I have some papers there. Sometimes I'll rest my hands on it. It's not necessary, and I love the setups that I've seen with the Weather Channel, with what Jonathan does. Folks who aren't necessarily using a desk, but for us, it's a bit of a style choice. It's something that we felt would add to the aesthetics of the show without being distracting. It's not big. It's not flashy. You barely see it most of the time when we're punching in. But it was a style choice, and it's a way for us to make a bit of a callback while having a callback to something traditional, but making it our own at the same time.
Right.
Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I add just a quick thing, which is the research that we've just done, I think really suggests that where news is concerned, there are times there's something truly psychologically important about a desk. And interestingly, weather is the opposite. If it's not used right, it gets between people and the weathercaster and affects that adversely. So I think there's some really interesting sort of, there's kind of a psychological thing that's happening with these things that we've got to get smarter and smarter about.
Yeah, maybe I'm a bit Pavlovian, where it's just like, yeah, we need to have a desk here, okay? I can't explain it. We need to have one. But something that I saw in your research, and I was excited to kind of see some of this stuff because, you know, I've been hearing about this research for like the last week or two. Right. But, you know, I think there's something to having it as close as it is as well. You know, we are taking stock of all the things that we're doing, and I feel like, you know, being as close as we are, having a desk that, you know, isn't putting too much space between ourselves and the viewers, at least perceived space between ourselves and the viewers, is something that I think makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. I want to switch gears a little bit. Jonathan, you've tried a lot of things experimentally in the form of your show itself. I wonder, what elements have the audiences been most receptive to in terms of your experimentation? And what has your experience so far taught you about what they will and they won't accept in terms of presentational innovation?
I would have to say the most popular part of the show is sort of goes back to a traditional newscast format in a way. We do a trending segment at the end of our show that's very much pulling up tweets or pulling up talker stories. But what me and my co-hosts do is we really do we do put a lot of personality into that segment. It's probably the most popular part of our show. We clip it out every day. It gets a lot of views just on the clip out. And I was going to say that also with our OTT, we're really producing the show in sort of blocks to be clipped out of our show for secondary posting. And that's where it's getting a lot more views, is in the secondary postings than in the whole show in itself. We started out as a digital show. It was only on YouTube. Then we moved during the pandemic, same vibe, to being on our NBC affiliate there at Hawaii News Now. And
let me ask you about that modularity. So you build the show that way. You build it to be broken apart, to be disseminated on different social platforms, digital platforms. So how does a producer or a news director need to be thinking about how to take that approach pragmatically? What's different in the mindset of making the show, presenting it in that way, as opposed to a more conventional way?
Well, I think you want to think about it like, what is going to be those viral possibilities from this show? So something that just happened yesterday, I was on there yesterday before I flew out here. There was a big breaking news story. It happened about 10 a.m. Our show's on at noon. Really, it was the passing away, the death of the last remaining royalty of Hawaiian lineage. It was Princess Kawananakoa. She passed away. We really had no resources, no one talking, but we did happen to have a reporter on our staff who is working on a book about this princess and the family. So it was about just quickly making a roundtable discussion. It lasted 6 minutes. We led our show with that, and it sounds so boring, but the clip out and embedding that into that breaking news story did so well. So I think it's just acting quickly to say, oh, we can put that together really quickly and make a segment out of it. Or, like I said, with the volcano, a very low-tech science explainer we did on our show with no desk, or we just took Dawn dish soap and poured how lava flows and how gravity works. And it got so much reaction. It was like completely opposite, but it was a great way to show science in a Bill Nye version that was very low-tech, but people loved it. It was so much fun.
What I'm hearing from Jonathan is like, originality is always something that is a part of our calculus when we decide, okay, this is something that we want to have on social. This is something that we want to, put on YouTube. Asking, we do an hour-long show every weeknight, and asking, everybody to sit through an hour-long show is a commitment. I don't even think my parents do that anymore. I mean, when we first started, like maybe, but what I'm hearing from you and what I know in my own experience is like, originality is something that is always, that we always feel like will play well on other platforms. Watching the Jim Cantori with the EF 0 to 5 bit, it's like, man, of course you're going to clip that, right? Because this feels original. This feels different than anything else.
And what that thumbnail looks like. Yeah, that's awesome, right? Like when you clipped it and you have that thumbnail, I think you think about those things as well.
Mm-hmm. Let's also talk about length, because an important part of presentation is the length of a story. I'm hearing from more and more different groups that they feel less hemmed into a minute 30 stories, that they've been holding on to for years. and that maybe you don't need your A block to be an opening salvo of lots of short stories, bang, 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 but you can just pick a couple and drill in more deeply to them. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are, and anybody can weigh in on this, about time and pacing and the elasticity of that and whether or not we're embracing that more.
Real quickly, because it came up in the last conversation about what to do with the stuff left on the cutting room floor, I think something that we're going to start experimenting with more at our station is clipping a GoPro facing the reporter when they're doing their interview to just cut back to back the Q&A of the reporter doing the interview. So you can just have not a package, but a conversation play out of an interview a reporter does that can be 3 minutes long. And it also adds authenticity because you're seeing that reporter asking the real question. It's not being put into a VO track. You're just watching that news come to life and you're hearing them ask the questions in the real play out form. It's a really easy edit too. It's just taking 2 camera SD cards, put them together, cut. You got the Q&A.
I think one of the real gifts of the pandemic was something that you were describing, which was people were thrown into situations where they just had to get it on, and nobody was enforcing formula. Formula got thrown out the window. It was, we just have to get it done today. How do we respond to today? And I think, interestingly, that reconnected newsrooms to something that sounds fundamental, but it's really the heart and soul of everything, which is, what does today want of us? Not how do we do every day the same? What does today want of us?
I really like to, so I agree with absolutely everything that's been said so far on this topic, and I really like to look at what is the story and what is the audience interest, because I mean, just to kind of go down this road about like what's the right number of beats, right? What's the right A block? On a day that's like for us 75 and sunny, where we don't think of ourselves as a forecasting network, we are a weather news network. We might have 10 different stories. I mean, we went crazy on the Hawaii volcano, but we also have to look at, the floods happening in the Pacific Northwest and then, the unusual heat in the Southeast. On a day like today, there is one story and it is 15 hours long, right? And it's how you slice it. And that is 100 million people in the path of a major winter storm that also has tornadic activity that's going to be bearing down in the south tonight. So when I look at it that way, my A block is not a bunch of minute-and-a-half stories or segments. My A block is literally tonight, it'll be 20 hours long, because when we start forecasting at 6A or we start a show at 6A, we're not going off the air until 1 in the morning. Because of this danger. So I always look at the staff and say, what's our big story? What are our 3 top stories? And hopefully, on the big days, the answer is there's only one story, and I'll slice that up in a bunch of different ways, but there's only one story. And, how long does it need?
Big retweet there. Big retweet. I mean, story selection is really going to let you know how much time that you're going to be working with. For us, when we started developing the show, we were looking at. Let me go back some. There was already some precedent at Newsy, soon to be Scripps News, for doing videos longer than 1:30, right? We were putting these standalone videos on OTT. We were putting them, on the web. We never really had to adhere to that minute 30 sort of guardrails. So when we started doing this show, we saw that there was an appetite for deeper dives, and we see that in podcasts, news magazines. We love watching John Oliver Tonight. I mean, it's or last week tonight. And so we start our show with one big story every night, one big story. I feel like we're seeing that there's an appetite for that, but truly it is about the story selection and what it is that you're doing with it, because you don't want to be stretching something a little too thin when you just don't have the material. So
Now,
And I'm sorry.
So go ahead.
Just real quickly, one thing I like to do with the reporter packages that have been filed, like I said, I'm a scavenger every morning, and when I feel like someone didn't get enough word in out of their interviews, I literally go to their timelines and stretch out part of their interview. Like, take that 10-second soundbite they did. Sometimes I'll let it play out for 30. Like, I'm like, oh, they cut that person off. They had so much emotion. They were actually saying something there. Why did we only let them talk 10 seconds?
Yeah.
But like, literally going to that photographer's timeline and stretching it out. Because I have 24 minutes, no commercials. So I get the luxury of all the time I want.
There are some luxuries at this table right now that we probably should acknowledge. We're running up against time, but I want to get a couple more questions in. We've been talking about in the studio so far, but what about out of the studio too? I mean, and Barry, you and I were talking about this outside before, and Christian, we talked about this. Is it important? Scripps is putting some of its anchors back out in the field. They're taking them off the desk. They're saying, go out in the field and report. CBC was talking about their main anchor wants to get out in the field as much as possible. Is that a practice we need to be seeing more of at the local level and the national level? The anchor leaves the studio and goes into the community.
I mean, it's not my job to say what people should or shouldn't be doing, but I mean, doesn't Lester Holt look great when he's in his, wax cotton jacket out in the field, doing the damn thing? I mean, really, there's an opportunity there to connect with audiences and to let people play to their strengths. A lot of times, I'm a journalist first. I sit behind a desk every night, but I love being out in the field. I think that other people like me there's an opportunity there to better connect with audiences, to really put ourselves in these environments that we're talking about, and create some really good content while allowing people to play to their strengths. So should people be doing more of it? I mean, if that's their bread and butter, yeah. But I think that there definitely presents a few opportunities to do some really good storytelling when you're getting away from the desk and out in the field.
And where is the news? Where's the weather? Where does it happen? Anybody?
Out there.
Thank you.
Outside.
Out there, right? And it's outside, it's out there, it's going to it. We, years ago, we started shutting down studios when there was a big event, and we call it anchoring from the field. We flip everything. We put all our anchors in the field, we keep the experts back home, and it's an 80-20 rule. 80% of all the shows are done live from the field, and then 20% or less are done from the studio, because the story is out there, right? And that has become really, really important to us. Look, we get criticized sometimes for the choices we make in storms, but we feel really strongly that our job, our mission is to keep people safe. Our mission is to protect and save lives. And the best way to do that is to demonstrate to people why we tell them, why we ask them to listen to their local officials when they say leave, right? So again, just getting back to the stories out there, whether it's sports, whether it's money, whether it's weather, whether it's elections, it's all out there. And getting to the people who are exposed to the out there, which is us, is the name of the game.
Mm-hmm. One of the really fascinating things about our anchor research has been every time we have gone out and we ask people simply, we say, I want to hire an anchor you'll love and want to watch on a regular basis. Please describe the type of person I need to find for that job. Every time we've done that, except once, they talked about personality more than anything else. One time, May 2020, out of nowhere, the word community went to the top. And when we looked at what people were saying, they weren't saying someone who knows the community. There was some of that, but what it really was someone who cares about the community. And they're saying, I want someone who understands what I'm going through. So I was really heartened by that, because I thought it means that our relationship with people is dynamic. It's not static. But when they need you the most, it is about your relationship to them in their world. And I think it's nuts to think we shouldn't be out there.
There are a lot of interesting simultaneities going on in this discussion of ultra high tech and then kind of ultra low tech authenticity and an ability to connect with community.
I still want IMR and the ITL set.
Who's going to say no?
So let's talk
until we bring IMR into the field.
IMR, really?
Let me use that volcano graphics you have made, please. Yes.
All right, we'll talk after this. So we've come up against our time here. I want to thank everyone on the panel for a great discussion. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask everyone to just sit tight for one more moment, please, because we have Kathy once more in the audio here with Mac McLaughlin of FX Design Group to talk a little bit more about that study that Barry has been talking about.
Thanks, Michael. What a lively panel. As you noticed, FX Design commissioned the research that Barry unveiled today, and I'm here with Mac McLaughlin, who's the CEO and design director at FX Design Group. Mac, is this research changing what you recommend to your clients?
It will. We're not finished digesting it yet. There's still, Barry barely touched on the topics. But a couple of things top of mind. Number one, anchor desks are still important. So if you're thinking about walking the entire show, maybe it's okay for your group, but for most local news, anchor desk was preferred over any other position, so that's important. Secondly, and I know the LED manufacturers in the room, if there are any, won't appreciate this. The audience doesn't seem to be bothered by the lines of the video array. So if you've got a 3x3 array, a 4x4 array, you're still in good shape. You don't need to go out and replace it immediately with LEDs. Third is if several stations have thought about eliminating their key wall, I would highly recommend now after the study that they do not do that they still find a place for the key wall. And on top of that, I don't know if you noticed, but in the one that Barry did show, the virtual set had the highest net promoter score of all sets that we showed, whether it was anchor desk, chroma key, or any of those. It was the virtual set had the highest net promoter score in the study. So there you go for the virtual folks. So you need to keep your key wall so you can do a little bit of virtual, I think, in the studio. And I think you've heard earlier today TTG is going virtual or adding virtual. And I think Brainstorm's up next to talk about virtual, right? Is that happening? So I think virtual's part of the future. And then what else? I think in January, Barry and I will be ready to go on tour with the study. So if you'd like to see the full study, reach out to us and we'd be happy to come bring it to you. Thanks.
All right, road shows are coming.
Thanks very much, Mac.